Taiwan is dealing with its biggest COVID outbreak yet. And with me is computational biologist Chase Nelson, who is based in Taiwan and who has analyzed Taiwan's COVID situation. Chase, thanks for being with me here today.
Thanks very much for having me.
We're seeing cases in the multi-tens of thousands. How concerned should we be about this?
Right. So there's a couple of pieces of good news about Omicron. It's that it's slightly less severe than some of the other variants like Delta. And another piece of good news is that Taiwan is highly vaccinated. However, Omicron is also very contagious and can be very dangerous to the unvaccinated. And my primary concern really has to do with two things. The first is hospitals and healthcare workers becoming overwhelmed by the sheer number of cases that are calling in for tests and being admitted for severe complications. And the second one is that of our 75 and older population, a whole 20% are not vaccinated. That means they have zero doses. So they are at very high risk from severe disease and death from Omicron.
And we see that most of those dying recently have been the elderly.
Absolutely. The elderly and the unvaccinated are definitely at the highest risk from COVID-19, even Omicron. And that is evidenced by the recent Omicron outbreak in Hong Kong, where they made up a large fraction of the deaths there as well.
For us who still do not want to get COVID, how can we protect ourselves from COVID?
It's all a risk-benefit balance, really. You know, how much do you want to keep living your life as normal, and how much precaution should you take? One of the things that I think that everyone can do is to continue to wear masks, even when it's a situation where there isn't necessarily a rule that you have to do so. So, for example, at the gym. You can also skip gatherings that you don't have a strong desire to attend, because obviously, if people don't get together, the virus can't transmit between them. And there are other really important things, too, like opening windows and increasing ventilation.
So the easiest way to catch Omicron is by being in the same room or having a conversation with someone who has it?
Absolutely. There's a pretty solid consensus now that the majority of COVID-19 infections occur when people breathe shared air. If you're in an indoor, enclosed space where you are sharing air with someone that has COVID-19, you are at highest risk. So by implication, you can help to lower that risk by, number one, opening windows. That helps dilute the virus concentration indoors. And then another thing is just to move activities outside.
What about someone who's had COVID and has recovered? Are they still contagious?
So if they have recovered from COVID-19 and they're negative, say on a rapid antigen test, then they should not be contagious anymore. Now, it's also important to say you can have a false negative. So, any test is not perfect. And if you have symptoms, even symptoms just like a cold, I think a safe bet is to assume you have COVID until you are sure you're negative.
What are the most obvious symptoms of having COVID?
Right. So it actually has taken the world a long time to catch up to this officially, but the top symptoms of COVID right now just match a common cold. So runny nose, fatigue, sore throat, all of these things that you'd normally associate with a cold, especially in the vaccinated people, could very well mean that you have COVID, and in fact, they are the most common symptoms.
So tell us, what do you expect from the death rate? We see it climbing pretty quickly.
Right. That's a great question. It's known from other outbreaks across the world that deaths, the counting of them, does lag behind the counting of cases. That can be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. And so it's important to realize that the huge number of cases that we're seeing right now may only translate into severe outcomes a little later. And that, to me, means that we need to stay vigilant and continue to take precautions, especially to make sure that our healthcare workers don't get overwhelmed in the coming weeks.
I've been talking with Chase Nelson. He's a computational biologist based here in Taiwan.
Thanks a lot.